Hey there, do you dream of escaping into a book? Maybe your escape includes a cozy cabin in the mountains or a magical town along the coast. Either way, you're in the right place. Welcome to Literary Escapes with me, Becky. This year on the podcast, we're exploring the United States. So every week I'm going to bring you a new book set in a different state. So let's see where we're going today. Welcome back to the Literary Escapes podcast. I am your host, Becky, and we are continuing our trek around the United States. We are almost done with this series. I can't believe it. After this episode, we only have 4 more episodes in our 50-state series. Today, we are traveling to New Hampshire, and our tour guide is author Erin Branscom. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to have you here. New Hampshire is one of those states that I think people probably pass through a lot. Getting to, I don't know where, New England. It's right below Massachusetts, if my geography is, no? Never mind. I'm not even going to go there then. Is it above, next to Vermont? Is it that one?
It's right above.
Okay.
And it is next to Vermont.
Okay.
And I have a funny story about geography. I am terrible at geography, so don't feel bad.
Obviously, I'm really good at it. So.
No. New Hampshire is a seriously beautiful state. I went there in 2017 with my aunt and my daughter, and we drove the Kancamagus Highway, which, if you've never heard of it, it's basically the most beautiful highway to drive in the peak of fall. It is like nothing you could ever imagine color-wise. And
very cool.
I drove it peak, and it was just so beautiful. You just stop at every little stop and like look at things. There's creeks, there's all kinds of lookouts, and
I love that.
Then the dreamiest small towns with like covered bridges. Ooh. And just the quintessential like Stars Hollow vibes, right?
Nice.
And so don't sleep on New Hampshire. It is beautiful and gorgeous, and the people are so nice there.
Tell me the name of that trail again.
It's the Kancamagus Highway. And it runs, don't forgive my geography. The New Hampshire people are going to be like, what? I think it pretty much runs east to west or west to east. And okay. You can just, it's a long highway, like 20 miles or something. It's a long way. It goes through Vermont too, I think. And nice. It's like a day thing. You could just take a day trip and a picnic, and there's little stores and like towns you can stop at along the way. And nice. That's what we did. We just made memories and stopped. And
I love that.
We stayed at this little, I think it was a motel, and it was so cute there. I just can't even begin to tell you. And I have always played out series in my head. Like I always like make up people and things and places. And I just thought like everyone did that. They don't do that. And so
I love
at this
that.
point, I hadn't written books. I had just written fun stories because I thought that stories in everyone's heads. And that night I had a dream about falling in love, my first book. And it took place at this inn, very similar to the place we were staying, only we didn't stay at an inn. It was a motel, but it was similar feel to it. And so I just had this dream, a vivid dream about these people in this place. And I wrote it all down in the notes on my phone, which I wish I would have saved that to this day, but I don't think
that would be fun. Yeah.
That would be fun. And so I would think about these people in this place over the years. And in 2020, I was like, yeah, I got to write this story. And it became 6 books and a whole place and a whole series.
I love that.
And my heart just lives in this town called Freedom Valley in New Hampshire. Nice. And it's actually based on North Conway, New Hampshire. If anyone has ever been there, it's just a beautiful little town and super fun to visit. And they have a little train that goes through the town, and we rode the train, and just nice people. And I remember during that time, the little soccer league is playing. It's just this perfect, cute little small town.
I love that. Yeah. So is Freedom Valley on the Kancamagus Highway?
It is not on the actual highway. It is not far from there though. It's
Okay.
it's the entrance of it where it starts.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
My daughter lives up in Massachusetts. I'm going to have to see if she has traveled on. I just like saying this, the Kancamagus. I had to write it down because
Saying that right. I hope I'm saying it right. I'm pretty sure I am, but it's just a gorgeous little, it could be a day trip too. So we were
that
actually
would be
staying in
fun.
Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we went up to North Conway. It was like 3 or 4 hours. So it's probably an
Okay.
overnight we get there, but just kind of an inexpensive little trip because most of the things you can do are free. So
Yeah. And just traveling along because it seems like I don't know if, when the peak time is up there for leaf peeping,
So
but it
I
might
want
be
to
over
say
by
like
now.
yeah, it's over. It's
Okay.
usually like mid-October. So
Okay.
they have a early fall and then transition into winter a little sooner than they do
Yeah.
where I'm at. But
Well, definitely sooner than us down here in Florida because we're still sweltering. So
yeah.
it's we got everybody's excited because this weekend we're supposed to have a cold front coming through. It's going to dip down to the upper 70s, folks. Break out the sweaters.
You know, so I went to Alaska a few years ago and in their July, like their peak summer, the high is 64. And they're in tank tops and shorts. And we're in hoodies and jeans because that's
Right?
hoodie weather and they're just
For
like
normal
looking at us like
people.
because we're in hoodies.
Yeah, that's in Florida, that's kind of the joke on the beaches. Like anytime that's not summer, you can tell the tourists because they're the ones that are actually like in swimsuits. And, if it dips below like 80, we're done. And the water starts cooling off and we don't go in it. So, yeah, you can tell who the tourists are for sure. They're the people that live
Yeah.
in like Alaska who, they're down with swimming in anything. So I love
Yeah.
that.
I'm like
That's
you have to be like 96 degrees for me to swim. I want
right.
it bath water temperature.
I'm totally with you there. So yeah. So you said that before falling in love, before you wrote that one, you were writing short stories. Is that
Yeah, just like stories in my head. Like I would just make up places people they were terrible, Becky. I mean, they should never see the light. But come back and read some of those and I'm like, really? We really thought that was okay.
it was a good place to practice, right?
Yeah. Well, and just fun little outlet. I've just always
Yeah,
thought of people, places, and things, and um, just a kind of a fun hobby. But Freedom Valley became alive. I can't even explain it. I've, I've even had some people reach out and ask if it's for sale, like for like uh, if I have a pitch deck for screen,
oh,
and I'm like, yeah, yes,
yes
yes, it's
indeed. I love that.
I get a little nervous though because sometimes they turn into series and they're not the same as the books.
Right.
But I do think that would be kind of fun though
That would
to
be
see it
pretty amazing just to see
at
your name on a
any small.
screen.
I
Totally.
think we're severely lacking, not even just mine, but I think we're severely lacking in small town series on Crown Media, Netflix, Hulu, things like that. I think we need
I
more of those.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
We'll have to get our
And there's
people
so
on
many
it.
good ones.
I
I mean,
know.
I could think of like 10 off the top of my head because I'm a small town romance
I
reader and
love, yeah,
I would just love to see so many.
how it actually came to life. That would
Yeah.
be so fun. I agree. That so many of those. So you get the idea for falling in love while you're up in the midst of all this gorgeousness. So, how did the journey go from getting the idea to being a published author with at least 6 books under your belt?
Actually, I have seven,
Okay, I
but
was gonna say I
I
thought I saw a couple
yeah, I wrote a
others.
there, and then I'm writing three more, like a new series now.
Nice.
And I wrote the first one, I had gone through a lot of grief at the time. Shortly after I went on that trip, well, I lost like a third of my family to death.
Wow.
And it was a hard time, like,
yeah, I can
mentally,
imagine.
and also in the middle of the pandemic. And so it was just a hard time. And I think everybody was just beat, beat down.
Yeah.
And I needed an outlet that wasn't going to be harmful. I just needed something positive to focus on. Yeah. And I just was like, I need something that's going to be like exercise my brain, like just something for me.
And give you the good feels along with it, Yeah.
And so I had been doing a live show on Amazon for a long time where I interviewed authors. And I interviewed over 380 authors, and it was so fun. And I interviewed some big names too that I was like breathing in a paper bag before I did those interviews. I was like, okay, I'm about to speak to Lucy Score. Okay, you can do this poker face, breathe in a bag. And then I'd be like, hello, welcome. But inside, just so you know, Becky, dead. Yeah. And I just was so, but I would talk to all these authors, and they were just so fascinating and so talented and so amazing and so kind and nice.
I love that.
In the back of my head, I was like, that's, if you ever ask someone like, what would you do if you could do anything at all? And I would always say, I would write books. Well, then one day, I think I was 40, and I was like thinking about that question and that answer. And I was like, well, I would write books, but if I won the lottery. And then my husband was like, well, why do you have to win the lottery to write books? Yeah. And I was like, that's a good question. I don't know. And he's like, well, what if you wrote a book? And I was like, what if I wrote a book? And so Falling in Love took me 9 times to rewrite that book. It was so terrible. Yeah. The first one is always, in my experience,
takes a lot longer. Yeah.
So I wrote it, and I mean, I never wanted to see that book again. After I wrote it, I was like, you're dead to me. I wrote you so many times, and we're done. Of course, I can reread it now, and I did the audio, and it's fine, but I was harder on myself than anything. But after 9, I mean, I went to college, Becky. Like, that's how many times I edited this book. I felt like I got a degree. And no doubt. When I was done, I thought that all books were written like that were so painful. And then I was like, well, now I got to prove that I can do it again, because now I'm challenged and I want to see if I can meet the challenge. So I wrote Baked in Love very quickly afterwards. And I wrote that one in 2 weeks, which is insane.
That is insane.
10 out of 10. But I was like kind of angry when I wrote it. Like, I want to make sure I can do this again. And I thought, like, here we go again, 9 more times. And my editor, after 2 rounds, said, okay, this is ready. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And she's like, no, you did your job, kid. You got this. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then, of course, all the other characters I fell in love with in those 2 books had to have their own books too.
For sure.
They were supposed to be 3, and we ended up having 6.
I love it.
And there's a spin-off series of this series coming too. I don't have immediate plans for that yet, but it's in the works, if that makes sense. And they just came alive. All the characters, all the people, Freedom Valley, like, vividly, I could describe it to you as if it were a real place.
I love that.
Real people.
That's so fun.
They were kind of magical. And then listening to the audio was insane because I had the coolest narrators ever. And Kit Swan did Falling in Love as the female narrator. They all did such a great job. And she really made that book come alive. And it looks like a really fluffy rom-com, but it's actually a really sad book. And it has hard parts in it, a little bit on the page too. But I wrote it for all the people that went through hard things too.
Well, because it was sometimes probably pretty therapeutic to get it out of you.
Very therapeutic. And I don't think people saw that coming when they read the book. I did do a trigger warning in the beginning. Okay. But Kit Swan broke down and cried in her booth when she read parts of the book. And she's a dark romance narrator. And she said, nothing breaks me. I've read some wild stuff.
Yeah.
And, nope, your book made me cry like a baby in my
Aw.
thing. And then she cried even more when I told her it was a true story. I was like, oh no, I should have lied to her. But I felt like there was a lot of people at that time that would come forward and say, you know what, I don't, this happened to me or this happened to me.
Right.
And then sometimes on Facebook, if you're in a lot of these groups, people will say, I need a book that's absolutely going to wreck me and put me back together again. And that's the kind of book that one is. It's a tough one, but it's a necessary one, I think, sometimes, because life's not always rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah. And
but of course,
it's kind of nice sometimes to read like things that you've gone through and to see how someone else, you know, even if it's just characters on a page, how they navigated it. And, you know, to go through the feelings with them. And like you said, you know, come out on the other side. That's good stuff.
With happily ever after. That's so important in romance, I think. So you have one, I feel like you rob people. You got to give them the happily ever after.
Absolutely. It's not romance if there's not a happily ever after in it.
It's for all the anxious girlies or anyone in general, like myself. Like my daughter, she'll watch a show and she gets upset. And I say, hey, there's always a happily ever after in the end, and rarely does the main character die. So
exactly.
It's gonna be okay. And she's like, okay, mom, and you know, keeps plugging through. So
that's so funny.
I think I saw Sarah Adams say something on an interview one time or a post or something that she said she writes very low angst books because she wants, like, she said she gets anxious or something, and she wrote books that are just, they don't completely wreck you, but they make you feel good and give you just that good feel. And I did that with the other 5. They don't have as much angst as the first one. But I think that's important too for a lot of people that just really need that safe space to read in.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of a mood reader, and I, you know, especially like during the pandemic, I needed lighter, fluffier books. And just because there was so much going on around us. And so yeah, it's interesting. Those posts of people saying, you know, I need a book that's going to wreck me. I've seen those as well, and I have a book now to recommend. So I usually don't read those. So, but I'm looking forward to this one.
You can't completely wreck people, but you can put a little bit on the page to convey for the people that maybe go through it. But I didn't want to like destroy people, but I also just was in such a place of despair that I'm like, I can't be the only one that's living in this world that's feeling this way.
Right. That's funny. It's interesting because our stories are very similar. And I find that really curious because I started with podcast and a book club where I interviewed authors a lot, and got my idea in a dream for my first book. And my mom had just passed away right before. So a lot of the same type of things. So it was very therapeutic to write my book and talk about the character's mom who had dementia and who passed away, and you know, all the feelings that came with that. And so I think being an author, thank you. It was she died a week before the world shut down, and I'm grateful for her journey that's when she was able to go, because you know, she would not have understood any of it. And so
that was a while.
Yeah, it was. So tell us about Falling in Love and that Freedom Valley series.
Falling in Love is the first book in the Freedom Valley series, and most people recognize it as a bright orange cover. And I even had a vision for every single cover. It was wild how all that came to me, because I had no idea about publishing or writing for that matter. I'm the girl that failed basic grammar in high school. That my teacher was like, yeah, this one's not going places.
You're not going to be a writer, girl.
Like, That's exactly what he said to me. And I remember I really took that, and like shame on him for saying that to a
Totally.
17-year-old. But so I kind of listened. I don't know, that was in the back of my head for decades. And I remember always writing these little stories. And then I was like, why don't we have editors?
Thank you very much.
I have all these ideas, but if I had a good editor, couldn't this happen?
Yeah.
And then I just kind of searched around and asked and found an editor who read my book and said it was really bad, which it really was.
That's first drafts. Yeah.
That's so for real. And in the publishing world, it's not for the weak at all.
Yeah.
Between
you have to have
readers,
thick skin. Yeah.
And also, if she didn't tell me that, the readers would.
Right. And it's so, much better to have the editor tell you than the readers.
It was much better to have her say that and me rewrite it 9 times to get it to where it is. And it's the biggest challenge. It's a challenging career. And
it really is. Yeah.
Gamble, because you don't know if it's going to pay off. There are so many times I was writing and thinking, I don't even know if anybody but my mom is going to read this.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Then you go and look and you're like, somebody will say, like, you've sold this many books. And you're like, what? And then that starts to make you picture that many people standing in the world that have read your books, and you start to feel really vulnerable. And you're like, what?
Right.
It's so humbling. So I wrote this book, and I wanted to write a book about, I wanted to write a book about Evan because I just loved Evan as a main character. He's just this cinnamon roll, like, inn owner who has no idea what he's doing. And he's like falls first and falls the hardest, and just a good guy who saves puppies and, just he'll help all his friends, be the buddy. But he also just lost his dad. He has no idea what he's doing. He's trying to take over an inn, and the inn's going down. The bank's going to the inn, and he finds this romance writer stranded on the side of the road and ends up taking her back to the inn. And he's like, you know what? You can stay at this inn. And, they end up having this falling in love. And, but I really wanted to make everyone fall in love with the people in the town. That was my goal. I wrote that book because when I wrote that book, to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what a trope was.
Right.
I was like, is that a suitcase?
Especially like after the fact, trying to figure out which ones you have in your book. It's I
remember a reader actually making a trope list and posting it, and I'm like, what is this? And I loved it. I was like, this is so cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you. And I better believe I saved all those. And learning more with every book. So if there's people out there thinking they don't know what they're doing, it's okay.
That's part of the process.
Part of the process. And so I didn't really know some things, but I knew how to make people feel. And I knew how to bring you a town and people. That I did know. Nice. And that was, I think, for 15 to 17 years, I was writing those little stories. Like I told you, I would make up as people things, and they were deep. Like they were like 3D people in my head. I could see them, I could feel them, I could hear what they would say, what their voices would be like. So Freedom Valley is very much like a 3D, like real town. Okay. And so I knew I could bring all of those main characters to life, and that is what I aim to do with that series. And I think I did it. I think I did it. But
I love that. That is such a really cool goal. And to know that you can make the reader feel and to make them kind of see your characters and see your vision for this town and to fall in love with all of that's amazing. I love that. That's a really cool gift.
It's the one thing I knew I could do, but I knew I wasn't as strong of a writer when I wrote the first couple. And I was like, I got to start somewhere. Yeah. And this is going to be, I never really told anyone this, but I wrote this series because it was my weakest series I had in my head. And there were 10 series in my head. And I picked the one that I knew wouldn't be the strongest, but ended up being very strong. And which is interesting because of what's to come.
Yeah, that's
But
super
I
interesting.
knew I could learn on these books. And I just thanked readers for letting me learn and put these together. And they've done well, and they've brought me so much joy, and I'm grateful.
I like the way you put that, because you have to be willing to put out what you feel like is your best book for what you know right now, and then learn on it and do another one. Put out the best you can for that moment, learn from it, and move on. And so many people are afraid to put out something that isn't perfect or isn't USA Today worthy book. And you have to give yourself the grace to learn. And that's kind of humbling.
So humbling. I tell you what, I don't read my reviews anymore because I don't hate myself. But I'm just kidding. Some of them are really nice.
Yeah.
But this is a humbling and vulnerable career. Yeah. And I write for myself, and if someone finds it and loves it too, that's just such a win for me, and such a them, I feel like. And then there's going to be some people that are like, if I read another small town romance, I'm out, and that's okay. I eat them like cake. I'm like, who has small town romance? Give them to me. Especially if I can grab them all on my Kindle and just binge read them all, give them to me, all of them. And love to read small town romance. Whenever I find someone who writes small town romance, I'm like, and your name is?
Exactly. Thank you very much. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my Kindle.
Welcome to my Kindle. Now you live here.
Exactly. So what are you reading right now?
So I'm an editor part-time, and I'm editing. So I don't really read when I'm editing just because I don't have time. And I'm writing. So I'm at capacity on that. I'm editing, I think I can say this. I'm editing a book for Lyra Parrish, and it's called, I don't remember.
Okay.
Yes.
I think so
I'm editing her newest Christmas book that comes out next week. And that's been, when I tell you, I loved her first book last year. I read it as a reader, and I was like, that was so good. And then when she hired me to edit the second book, I'm like, what is this? I have just enjoyed this book so much. So that's what I'm editing, and I should have that finished by the weekend. And then I'm writing. I've never told anyone this, but I guess I can tell you. It's just between us, right?
Yep, exactly. I won't tell anyone.
No. And I'm writing a new book series that takes place in the Rockies area. I think I can say that. And they are contemporary romance, not as rom-com, and a little suspense in there. And it's a 3-book series. And the first one's coming out in March. And everybody keeps asking for it. And I'm like, I will not put anything out until like a week before. I'm going to drop them all. And so,
wow. Okay.
And then I wrote a fall rom-com that just came out this fall. And it's part of a brand new series called Cozy Creek. And I don't know if you've seen it.
I did. I saw that on your website. I was wondering about that one.
So we put out that series, me and 5 other authors, and it's amazing. Cozy Creek's an awesome small. And so I wrote a sequel to that, kind of like it's attached to the characters of that. So if you knew the characters in that, you would definitely know the characters in the next book I'm writing. And that one comes out next fall. It'll be the fall book for next year.
Oh, fun.
And that one is, I think I have like 30,000 words on that one. So that one is, I had to put a pin in that one because the other series comes out first. You know how sometimes you just want to write all the books at the same time?
Yeah. And it's
you're like,
annoying when like a series that's supposed to be, not next year, but the year after starts poking at you. So
I know.
That's, I've been dealing with that one this week.
Yeah. Dangly carrot. You're like, okay, well, if I finish this one, then I can write that one. So I have 3 large books I'm writing. These are large. These are the largest books I've ever written. And think Yellowstone vibes.
Wow, fun.
So a little bit of Beth in there. I love Beth. I don't know if you watch Yellowstone.
I don't, but I think I know exactly who you're talking about.
The crazy blonde. That's my favorite.
Yes.
So I have kind of a character similar to her. They don't look anything alike, but I went to Yellowstone, actual Yellowstone Park, and Jackson, Wyoming last summer.
Such a cool area.
Coolest area. And I had so many book ideas. I was just sitting there staring into space, like glazed over. My husband's like, you have like 6 book ideas running through your head right now, don't you?
I do.
And that I knew I was going to write that series after I committed to the Cozy Creek and then another series. So that's where so I can't really read a lot right now for fun, but
makes sense. Yeah.
This I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but Lyra Parrish's Christmas book is so good. And not just because I'm editing it and I love it so much, but they're funny. And she has a lot of feeling. Like I always tell her, she hits people in the feelers. Not just like funny, but depth to them. Like their characters have like problems, like issues, like normal people stuff that they navigate. And I think those are
that's fun.
Really important.
That's something. Well, very cool. I like that. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you and learning all about your books in New Hampshire. And I'm looking forward to diving into falling in love. I can't wait to get to know your Freedom Valley and the characters and fall in love with your town. Because I have no doubt that that'll happen. I'm preparing myself already for a good cry, apparently. So
well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to be part of the Read Across the U.S. Book Club, I'd love to have you join us. There is a link in the show notes. So just head down there and click and we will welcome you in. So see you in the book club, I hope. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week with a new episode.